Most people think feeding birds is simple generosity. You put out seed, they eat it, everyone benefits. A nice thing you do on a Sunday morning that makes the yard feel a little more alive. But the moment you started filling that feeder every day, you stopped being a supplier and became something else entirely. You became infrastructure. You became part of the survival system of every bird that visits your yard. And what that does to them, what it changes in their bodies, their behavior, their entire lives, is something most people never think about until it's already happened. Welcome back to Roots of Survival. If you're new here, subscribe now, because what you're about to learn will change the way you think about the scoop of seed you put out every morning. Today we're going through 8 things that happen when you feed birds every day, things that are happening right now in your yard, whether you know it or not. And we're going to end with something that most backyard birders find difficult to hear the first time, but it's the most important thing on this list. Stay with me through all 8, because number 8 is the one that changes everything. Number 1, the birds in your yard are getting physically stronger, and they know it. When you fill that feeder consistently, the birds that visit aren't just grabbing an occasional snack. They're integrating your food into their daily caloric budget. And for small birds operating on razor-thin energy margins, that changes their bodies. A black-capped chickadee in winter needs to consume roughly 35% of its body weight in food every single day just to maintain its metabolism and survive the night. That's the equivalent of a 150-pound person eating 50 pounds of food daily, when natural food is scarce, snow-covered branches, frozen ground, insects dormant. Your feeder becomes the difference between a bird that makes it to spring and a bird that doesn't. Researchers at Cornell Lab of Ornithology, studying feeder-dependent populations, have documented measurable increases in body condition, specifically fat reserves and muscle mass, in birds with consistent access to high-quality supplemental feeding. Cardinals at feeders in the northern United States show statistically significant weight advantages over cardinals in similar habitats without feeders, particularly in late winter, when natural seed sources are lowest. What this means for you is that the cardinal sitting at your feeder right now in January is probably alive because of you. Not metaphorically, literally. That bird has adjusted its survival strategy around the assumption that your feeder will be there tomorrow morning. Number 2, they've reorganized their territories around your yard. Birds are territorial. Cardinals, chickadees, nuthatches, titmice, all of them defend space during breeding season and maintain smaller feeding ranges in winter. But when a reliable, high-calorie food source appears in the middle of that territory, the math changes. A male cardinal that might naturally defend a half-acre area will contract his territory tighter around a feeder that produces seed every day. He doesn't need to patrol as far. He doesn't need to forage across as wide a range. The food is concentrated, predictable, and defended only against other cardinals, not hidden under snow or inside frozen seed heads that take energy to crack open. Studies on feeder use and territorial behavior published in the Journal of Avian Biology found that birds with access to feeders reduced their foraging range by an average of 30 to 40%. The territory didn't disappear, it tightened. Your yard became the anchor. The birds are still defending space, they're just defending a smaller, denser, more efficient space that has you at the center of it. If you've ever wondered why the same cardinal shows up at your feeder every single morning, that's why. It's not visiting, it lives there, and you're the reason. Number 3, their daily schedule now revolves around yours. This one surprises people, but it shouldn't. Birds are extraordinarily good at learning patterns, especially patterns that involve food. If you fill your feeder at roughly the same time every morning, the birds in your yard will notice within 3 to 5 days. By the end of the first week, many of them will start arriving before you do. A chickadee that used to begin its morning forage at dawn now begins it at your back door, waiting for the sound of the latch, the scrape of the seed scoop, the movement that signals food is coming. Research on avian cognition from the University of Cambridge has shown that small songbirds are capable of associative learning that rivals some mammals. They link specific environmental cues, the porch light turning on, the sound of your footsteps on gravel, the particular jacket you wear most often, with the appearance of food, and once that link is established, they act on it. They show up early, they wait. Some species, particularly jays and chickadees, will vocalize near your door if you're late, not randomly, but in patterns that researchers describe as attention-seeking behavior directed at the food source, which in this case is you. What you need to understand is that these birds are not casually checking your feeder. They are scheduling their entire day around your routine. If you sleep in on a Saturday, they're waiting. If you go on vacation for a week without telling anyone to fill the feeder, they're burning energy flying back and forth to an empty food source that their survival model says should be full. Number 4, they're teaching other birds that your yard is safe. Birds don't just learn from experience, they learn from each other. When a chickadee or a cardinal establishes your feeder as a safe, reliable food source, that information spreads through the local bird community faster than most people realize. The mechanism is simple. A new bird, a migrant passing through, or a juvenile from a nearby territory, sees an established bird feeding calmly at your feeder. No alarm calls, no panic flights, just calm, repeated visits. That new bird watches. It learns. Within a day or two, it's feeding there too. This is called social learning. And it's been extensively documented in wild bird populations by researchers studying flocking behavior and information transfer. The National Audubon Society's long-term data on feeder use shows that feeders in their second or third year of consistent operation attract significantly more species and higher overall bird counts than new feeders, even when the food quality and feeder type are identical. The difference isn't the feeder. The difference is reputation. Your yard has become known in the bird community as a place that's safe, that has food, and that doesn't punish trust. That's an asset that builds over time. But it also means you're not just feeding the birds you see today. You're shaping the behavior of birds that haven't even arrived yet. Number 5, you've created a dependency, and most people don't realize it until it's too late. This is where the conversation shifts. Everything up to this point has been about what daily feeding does for the birds. Stronger bodies, tighter territories, learned schedules, shared trust. All of that is real, and most of it is positive. But there's another side, and it's the one researchers worry about when they talk about supplemental feeding at scale. The birds in your yard are no longer operating as if your feeder is optional. For many of them, especially in winter, it's load-bearing. A study from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology tracking feeder-dependent bird populations through severe winter weather found that when feeders were abruptly removed or left empty for more than 5 days, local bird populations experienced measurable declines in survival rates, particularly among species with high metabolic demands like chickadees and newthatches. The birds didn't just leave and find food elsewhere. Some of them stayed. They waited. They burned through fat reserves waiting for food that didn't come, and some of them died, not because the natural food in the area was gone, but because they had reorganized their survival strategies around a resource that suddenly vanished, and they didn't have time to adapt. This doesn't mean feeding birds is harmful. It means feeding birds comes with responsibility. If you're going to do it, you need to do it consistently, or you need to taper off slowly in a way that gives them time to adjust. Number 6, they're watching you more closely than you've ever watched them. Here's something most people miss. You think you're observing the birds. You stand at the window with your coffee and watch the cardinal, the chickadee, the nuthatch moving through the branches. You notice their colors, their songs, their little habits, but the entire time you're watching them, they're watching you, and they're better at it. Birds process visual information faster than humans. A chickadee can track your movements, assess your body language, and make a threat versus safety decision in under a second. Researchers studying corvid behavior, crows and jays, at the University of Washington found that these birds can distinguish between individual human faces, remember which humans posed a threat, and avoid those humans for years afterward. The smaller songbirds at your feeder don't have the same facial recognition capacity, but they have something close. They recognize you by shape, by movement pattern, by the clothes you wear, by the time you appear. And they're using that information to predict your behavior. If you move quickly, they scatter. If you move slowly, they stay. If you've been consistent for months, some of them will feed while you're standing 10 feet away. That's not tameness. That's trust. And trust in the bird world is a survival calculation. They've decided you're safe. They've filed you under non-threat. But if you betray that, if you suddenly start behaving unpredictably, moving erratically, or worse, if you disappear entirely without warning, that calculation updates, and it doesn't update gently. Number 7, some of them are becoming less wild, and that's not always a good thing. There's a term researchers use when talking about animals that live in close proximity to humans and begin altering their natural behavior in response: synanthropy. It means living alongside humans, adapting to human-modified environments, thriving in spaces that wild animals would normally avoid. Pigeons are synanthropic, so are house sparrows. So are the raccoons that raid your trash and the coyotes that hunt in suburban parks at dawn. And so, increasingly, are the birds at your feeder. This isn't a moral judgment, it's an observation. The cardinal that lands on your feeder while you're filling it, the chickadee that takes seed from your hand, the jay that recognizes your car pulling into the driveway, these birds are exhibiting behavior that their ancestors would not have survived with. They're tolerating human proximity at levels that would have been lethal in an environment with more predators, fewer food sources, and no feeders to fall back on. Some researchers argue that this is fine. Birds are adapting. Humans have altered the landscape. Birds that adapt survive, but other researchers, particularly those studying urban wildlife ecology, point out that synanthropic animals often lose behaviors they need when human support disappears. A bird that has spent 3 winters relying on feeders may not forage as efficiently when it has to. A bird that tolerates close human presence may not flee as quickly when that human turns out to be a threat. The wildness that kept them alive for millions of years erodes one season at a time. Number 8. The cardinal that waits for you every morning has made a choice. I saved this one for last because it's not about biology or behavior or survival strategy. It's about something quieter and harder to name. The birds in your yard, the regulars, the ones who come back every single day, are not there by accident. They've chosen your yard, they've chosen your feeder, and in a very real sense, they've chosen you. That cardinal sitting on the branch outside your kitchen window right now could be feeding at any of a dozen other feeders in a half-mile radius, but it's at yours. That chickadee that lands 2 feet from your hand while you're filling the seed could be foraging in the woods behind your house, cracking open natural seeds the way its species has done for millennia, but it's waiting for you instead. These birds have placed a level of trust in you that most people don't fully appreciate until it's tested. And the way it gets tested, the way most people find out how deep that trust runs, is when they stop. When they go on vacation and forget to ask someone to fill the feeder. When they move houses and leave the feeder behind. When life gets complicated and the daily routine slips and the seed runs out and stays out. The birds don't understand why. They just know that the resource they reorganize their lives around is gone. Some of them leave and find new territories. Some of them stay and wait. And some of them, the ones who waited too long in the wrong season, don't make it. You didn't mean to take on this responsibility. Nobody does. You just wanted to see some birds in your yard. But the moment you started feeding them every day, you became part of their world, and they became part of yours. That's not a bad thing, but it is a real thing, and it's worth thinking about the next time you fill the feeder. Before I go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever stopped feeding for a while, whether on purpose or by accident, and wondered if the birds noticed? Did they come back? Did you see them waiting? Tell me in the comments what happened. I read every one of them, and the stories people share here are some of the most moving I've ever heard. I'll see you in the next.